Hi everyone. Welcome to the Turkish Spotlight Secrets channel. All the details are in our video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this video before we dive in. Thank you so much for being here, because tonight we're opening a doorway into a story that has been whispered about for months and finally has a voice, Mahassine Merabet's. For a long time, curiosity about her private life simmered under every headline and comment thread. The elegant, determined actress, whose face we've seen on billboards and whose work ethic is the talk of every set, chose silence while the rumor machine hummed. But now, the silence is over. In a heartfelt conversation that felt less like an interview and more like a confession captured at golden hour, Mahassine finally spoke about the person who has quietly stood at the center of both her career and her heart, Cenk Torun. Her words didn't just draw attention, they sent ripples across the industry. When she said, with eyes that looked like they remembered every heavy night and every soft morning, that Cenk brought me back to who I am, the tabloid world leaned in, but her fans heard something deeper. They heard a woman naming the moment she found her way home. Mahassine didn't dress up the truth. She laid it out, raw and luminous. She talked about the relentless pace of back-to-back projects, the long nights in trailers under harsh lights, the scripts that blur together when you're spread too thin, and the crushing expectation to always glow, always smile, always perform. She admitted that she had learned to tuck away her own feelings so neatly that even she forgot where she put them. Somewhere between early calls and late raps, she began to feel like a stranger borrowing her own life. And then, somewhere unplanned and simple, Cenk stepped into the frame. Everything recalibrated. She felt the lift of laughter again. She went from counting scenes to counting sunsets. She made it clear that what they share isn't just romance wrapped in a picture-perfect bow. It's something steadier, something quieter and more essential. There are rare souls who walk beside you without fanfare, she said softly, and somehow, with just a look, they remind you of every piece you ever lost. For me, that's Cenk. The sentence felt like a secret finally spoken aloud. Within an hour, clips of her voice were spreading everywhere. Comments poured in like a chorus, you could almost hear the applause through the screens. She also admitted something that many in her position bury deep. At the peak of her busiest period, she felt adrift. She was exhausted from playing the part of the unbreakable star. Everyone assumes you're fine because you've learned how to pose, how to promise, how to show up, she shared. But sometimes, I wanted to stop performing strength. In that soft edge of life where people either crumble or rebuild, she says Cenk simply sat with her. He let silence be a refuge, not a punishment. He reminded her she didn't need to carry the world to be worthy. And in that space, she allowed herself to breathe again. What her words exposed wasn't weakness, it was humanity. The public had known Mahassine the professional, poised, driven, precise. What they saw now was the person who allows tears to dry on their own time, who smiles because she feels it rather than because a camera is rolling. And the person who quietly holds her hand through that process is a man who has known the industry long enough to understand how much it can take, and how much it can give back when you're brave enough to ask for what you need. She explained that being with Cenk has not only enriched her private life, it has lit up her craft in unexpected ways. He doesn't rewrite her scenes or tell her what choices to make, he simply keeps the ground steady beneath her feet, so she can reach higher. Inspiration began sneaking back in, the kind that arrives in small moments. A shared glance over a steaming cup of tea, laughter in a kitchen at midnight, a quiet drive along the Bosphorus where the city feels like it's humming just for them. They prefer the simple rhythm of everyday life when the cameras shut down, a long walk at dusk, a quiet dinner, a shared book left open on a coffee table. We don't need the noise, she smiled. We find our meaning in the hush between words. And with that, she described a love that makes complexity feel uncomplicated. The reaction was instant. Fans rallied around her honesty, praising the courage it takes to voice the vulnerability most people hide. Social media transformed into a giant living room where everyone seemed to say the same thing, we see you, we're with you. But it wasn't just adoration. Gossip pages, ever eager for a hook, suggested that her statements would put even more heat on their relationship. For once, heat didn't sound threatening. It sounded like light. That one line about finding herself again through Cenk's presence stuck. It wasn't just a sweet confession, it was a map of healing, the kind of phrase that settles in your chest and stays there. Within hours, it became the kind of quote people save and send to friends late at night. You could almost feel the city carrying it, like a secret everyone wanted in on. And she didn't stop at headlines. She peeled back another layer, revealing how, as time passed, their bond kept deepening. Being with Cenk made her less afraid to look in the mirror and see everything, every bruise, every bright spot, every regret. She admitted that owning her missteps wasn't easy. It's far simpler to put on armor and pretend there's nothing to learn. But during the moments when honesty felt like standing barefoot on cold tile, Cenk stood there too, without judgment, without a script, without a solution, just presence. When I'm with him, she said, I feel accepted in the most ordinary, extraordinary way. Those words felt like a promise fulfilled. Of course, the workload didn't shrink, and the city didn't stop watching. That's the tax of living in the public eye. She acknowledged how pressure tests a couple, the endless schedule, eyes everywhere, assumptions that metastasize into untrue narratives. Misunderstandings rise and fall with every news cycle. Rumors multiply because they sell. But she and Cenk have chosen a different posture, not silence born of fear, but quiet born of certainty. They won't wrestle with every accusation or chase every fire. Instead, they return to their center. That's where their trust lives, and it has a way of putting out flames without a single dramatic gesture. A surprising shift happened inside her too. With him, she feels softer and more anchored at the same time. She says her priorities have shifted as if someone turned the lights on in a room she didn't know was there. Success still matters, excellence still drives her. But now peace sits beside ambition instead of trailing behind it. She talks about small moments as if they are the real premiere dates, the morning they burned the toast and laughed until they couldn't stand, the rainstorm they watched from a windowsill, the way the house feels different when they're both there. She says Cenk taught her to linger. To treat time like it's precious, not a currency to be spent without thinking. If the earlier part of her career was a sprint, what she's describing now is a dance. A slower, truer rhythm. And in sharing all this, she didn't just send love letters to Cenk, she offered a mirror to anyone who has ever lost themselves in the noise. She acknowledged the seasons of uncertainty and that sense of personal drift that so many endure. Those seasons, she says, make the current moment even more luminous. Standing next to him, she said, I feel whole in a way I didn't know how to describe before. It's not a fairy tale, more like a story you build by hand, day by day. She also defined what love means to her now, not just heat and chemistry, but patience, attentiveness, and empathy. The daily act of seeing one another clearly. The courage to admit when you're wrong and the softness to forgive without keeping score. Through this, she's rediscovered parts of herself she thought were gone. She notices small details again, the way afternoon light paints the floor, the comfort of shared silence after a long shoot, the relief that comes with not explaining yourself all the time. Everything meaningful feels newly illuminated. The wider world noticed, as it always does. Her words dominated feeds and headlines. Some questioned whether anyone in the spotlight can really keep a love this grounded. Others said her openness felt like a rare gift, especially to younger fans who often only see polished perfection and filtered joy. For many of them, Mahassine's voice became that of a big sister reminding you that you're allowed to be a work in progress and still be worthy of tenderness. She went on, explaining that the weight of what she'd weathered in the past has become the measure of how she treasures what she has now. Every relationship, she believes, teaches you something. With the right person, even the lessons feel generous. That doesn't mean absence of conflict, it means presence of care. You can learn without wounding each other, she reflected, and grow without losing your softness. In that line, you could hear the years in Cenk's presence, his ease, his patience, the gravity of someone who has seen the cycles and chooses steadiness anyway. She turned practical too, describing how they navigate the chaos of their careers. There are days when she's running lines before sunrise and he's taking a late call, and yet they make a ritual of checking in, even if it's a stolen 5 minutes between takes. They're learning balance not as a fixed state, but as a living conversation. They complement one another, she said, not by mirroring, but by making room for the other's edges. She doesn't hesitate to admit her mistakes with him, and in return, he doesn't turn those confessions into ammunition. The safety of that exchange is what fortifies them. What stood out in everything she said was sincerity, unadorned, unperfumed, the kind that can't be faked. It threaded through every admission, every pause, every smile that didn't need words. Maybe that's why people responded the way they did, not because the story was scandalous, but because it felt real. It felt like the kind of love that doesn't need fireworks to be seen, the kind that leaves a light on in the hallway so you can always find your way back. And now, after letting us all into that intimate truth, she does what she's always done. She gets up early, goes to set, memorizes lines, builds characters, and comes home to a life that makes sense to her. She trusts what she has. She trusts the man who sits beside her during credits and in between scenes, whose hand she reaches for when the music fades. She trusts the quiet they share, because inside that quiet is everything, the laughter they haven't laughed yet, the plans they haven't said aloud, the moments that will never make it into a headline but will define them nonetheless. Perhaps that's the message in all of this. Love isn't a spectacle, even when lived in public. It's a series of small, holy decisions that add up to a life. And somewhere in that mosaic, she found her way back to herself. She didn't do it alone. She did it beside a man who saw her clearly and chose, again and again, to stay. That's the story she finally told. And it's the story we'll probably be talking about for a long time, not because it feeds the machine, but because it nourishes something more genuine. For everyone who needed to hear it, for anyone sifting through noise hoping for a note of truth, consider this your sign. Sometimes the boldest thing you can say is simple: I'm here, I'm trying, and I'm loved in a way that helps me be more myself. This brings us to the end of our video. If you enjoyed our video, please subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets and share it with the people you love. See you in the next one. Goodbye.